Thank you for joining us today. If you're watching the YouTube channel, we appreciate it. We would welcome your questions, especially if you want to join us for service or for studies. We normally study a topic, but we're not restricted to that. You can ask any question, we're biblically answer it. That's our goal. Anyway, we're the Cyber Church of Christ, and you can contact us at cybercochrist@gmail.com for any question, concern, uh, anything biblically related. We'll be happy to accommodate you. But today, normally, we use the King James Version in the Cyber Church of Christ, and uh, our normal thing to do is to have one topic that we go over, or at least it's refined down to one topic. Today's is called the Children of the Resurrection. Now, normally I hear resurrection, I'll hear many sermons, and it's death, burial, resurrection. And they'll teach about Jesus being resurrected. So I thought I would rename name the today's lesson Children of the Resurrection, to separate it from Jesus being resurrected to other human beings being resurrected. That's kind of the theme of today's sermon. Now, let's look at on this Children of the Resurrection. Let's start off with the definition, Anastasis, which close to our word anesthesia. Resurrection, and this G386 that you see, that comes from our Strongs here. And we get the original Greek words and get the definitions of them because it helps in our studies. Now, this says that it's rising to life again, as if you'd already died, returning to life after death. So if someone says, hey, do you believe in reincarnation? Well, are you talking about the resurrection? You know, where I get saved in the end and going to heaven? And they say, no, we're talking about coming back as a human being. Well, no, you don't come to point it at a man wants to die. So you're not going to come back as a human being. But there are some that'll be resurrected. That's today's lesson. All right, let's look at our question here that we got. What is the resurrection? And who is or who will be the children of the resurrection? And so our answer is Jesus taught and explained the resurrection and who the children of the resurrection will be. You notice I didn't put in there are or who was, but as children of the resurrection will be. Okay. Now let's start off with today's going to be a lot of red letter, and I have it in red letter when Jesus is talking. But we're going to look at these three verses out of Luke. Got Luke 20, verses 34 to 36. Let's read that and then go through it with a little more detail. Verse 34, and Jesus answering said unto them. Now here's what happens is there was a question arose from him about who will be resurrected, and is there such a thing as your spirit moving on and being something. In the New Testament, you'll see where there were Sadducees and Pharisees, and the Sadducees didn't believe there was even going to be a resurrection, and they're the one asking him the question about a woman that had 7 husbands and they all died before she did, and then now when she dies, whose husband will she be in the hereafter? So we'll get to that. Now, here's a first thing Jesus is going to teach here, and Luke 20:34. And Jesus answering said unto them, the children of this world marry and are given in marriage. Verse 35, but they which shall be accounted worthy to obtain that world and the resurrection from the dead, neither marry nor are given in marriage. Okay, well, you're already teaching me something there. So there's going to be a thing called accounted worthy. Yeah, we have another uh, YouTube lesson on accounted worthy, and who has an account, who doesn't have an account. So you'll notice, but most of our lessons, they have lessons inside lesson, topics that are inside topics, because all topics agree in the Bible. That's why you're always going to have multiple topics, even when you're studying one. Okay, but they which are shall be accounted worthy to obtain that world being saved in the end and going to heaven, and the resurrection from the dead. So that at one time they were human beings and died, and now there's such a thing as called the resurrection. And one thing about them is they neither marry nor are given in marriage. And he gives a little more detail here in verse 36. Neither can they die anymore, for they are equal unto the angels. Okay, well, that's interesting. Well, we have a whole lesson on the angels and how they don't have a gender, what they do on planet Earth, what they're going to do on the judgment day, the hereafter. So the angels itself, that's another. So we've already encountered a topic called accounted worthy, and now we're looking at angels. So you'll see that this topic is encompassing, and it encompasses several topics. Neither can they die anymore, for they are equal unto the angels, and are the children of God, being the children of the resurrection. Okay, well, you gave me a definition. So children of the resurrection are the ones that are accounted worthy, and it shall be. That means they're not accounted worthy yet. You would find that out when you study. They're counted worthy, and they obtain that world. I mean, that's something that you have to get. It's not automatic. And they're neither married nor given in marriage. And then he calls them the children of the resurrection. So that's the name of our lesson today. And we got it right out of Jesus's mouth, saying children of the resurrection. That's the ones that are resurrected from the dead. Now, let's get a little more detail on the just will be the ones resurrected. And what do you mean by the just? Well, there's a topic called the just and the unjust. And the just are the ones that live in righteousness, get their sins forgiven and all. And the just shall live by faith. The unjust don't live by faith and don't have their sins forgiven. And they're really out, and they're outside the kingdom. All right, so first of all, let's see who shall be resurrected. Our topic is the just. Okay, Luke 4:14. Luke 14:14. And thou shalt be blessed, for they cannot recompense thee, for thou shalt be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. So what do you mean by recompensed? Well, we'll have a lesson on that someday. But it means to get back at, or to get paid for, or to get your just reward, something like that. Well, so thou shalt be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. So now we get a little more information about this children of the resurrection, that they are the resurrection of the just. So then I'd want to find out, how am I one of the just? I'd like to become one of these people that are the just, because I want to be resurrected in the end. So that's interesting already. Now let's look in John 5. We got 4 verses here that I want to look at. And you notice all the red letters. When I have it here in red, that would mean Jesus is speaking and teaching. When he's speaking, he's teaching, and he is the teacher. So we're going to look at John 5:26, which is Jesus speaking and teaching others. For as the Father hath life in himself, so hath he given to the Son to have life in himself. Okay, so if we were studying this, I would ask you to define the pronouns. Who is this himself? And you go, well, that refers to the Father. That's the noun on the table, all right? So he has life in himself. So the Father is life, okay? Now he hath given to the Son. Okay, so the Father is the one that's giving life, not Jesus. Yeah, it says here the Father has given to the Son what? Life, to have life in himself. So this himself goes with the Father, and then this himself means the Son. So that way I can break down the pronouns into which noun they're referring to. So there I've got two himselfs in there, but that's referring to two different entities. They're both known as God, but one's the Father and one's the Son. Okay, so this says here it was given, same as our life is given by who? Father of spirits. So the Father hath life. Father hath life. All right, so is he going to be the one doing the resurrecting? Yes. Yes, I'm glad you asked. All right, now verse 27, and hath given him authority to execute judgment also because he is the Son of Man. Well, you gave me a lot more detail there. So he has authority. Yeah, the Father gave him authority. Who is the him? The Son. So who's given? Well, the Father had given the Son something called authority. Authority to do what? Execute judgment. So we're going to find out this resurrection has to do with the judgment. Huh. And why did you give him the authority? Well, I got the answer right here. Because he's the Son of Man. And you can study that with us if you'd like. Son of Man is the one that's going to come down to earth, be following the Father's will, which is to have no sin, and set the great example. So now we have an example to follow where we want to get our sins forgiven as soon as they occur. And this says here, he is the Son of Man. Jesus, all through the Bible, would refer to his assignment, refer to himself as the Son of Man. Okay, because one thing is he was born a human being here on planet Earth of an earthly mother. Okay, so he is a son as far as what's a son on planet Earth, but this is the capital S, Son of Man. So that would be one of the titles, or if you want to call it the description, he is the Son of Man. Okay, now, this verse 28, John 5:28. Marvel not at this. Then there you see that there's a colon there. Marvel not at this. For at what? At him being the Son of Man and having authority to execute judgment. Okay. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming in which all that are in the graves shall hear his voice. What do you mean, all that are in the graves? Well, there were once human beings, and then they died. And if you study with us, you'll find out you go to a waiting place, waiting on the judgment. And then when there's at the end of the world, when there is a judgment day, that means everyone would be awakened for their judgment. That's what this means here. All that are in the graves. And they'll do what? They shall hear his voice. Well, who is this his? This his is the Son of Man. He's the one executing the judgment, right? He's executing the judgment. All that are in the grave shall hear his voice. So you're going to hear at the judgment, everyone will hear the voice of who? With the Son of Man. He's also called the judge because why? Well, because he's been given authority to execute judgment. So that's how we know he's the judge. Look at all the detail just in these few verses. And then plus, Jesus telling you what's going to happen in the future because he has privy to that information. And he was sent down here to do the task. And what did he do while he was here? Teach. That's what he did, just teach and teach, no matter who it is, no matter what their background. Teach, teach, teach. That's all he did. All right, now John 5:29 to close up these 4 verses. And shall come forth. Well, who's going to come forth? All that are in the graves, ones that are going to hear his voice. They shall come forth, they that have done good unto the resurrection of life. Oh, okay, well, you gave me some more information. So I'll be in the grave, that spirit will be resting or in the grave, and then it'll be awakened and I'll hear his voice. And then what's going to happen? Well, have you done good? Those that have done good, they're going to be resurrected into life. All right. So that you've already told us these are the children of the resurrection, which is the name of today's sermon. Unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil, unto the resurrection of damnation. Okay, so all that are in the graves, they're going to be awakened, hear his voice, and then some are going to have resurrection into a thing called life, and others will be resurrected into a thing called damnation. So that would be the definitions of after the resurrection. We have life and we have damnation. So that's what our goal here is at Cyber Church of Christ. We want to save ourselves, and then we want to save as many men, includes the women, as possible, because it's our desire that all men should come to the knowledge of the truth, be saved, same as the Father's goal. All right, so that's interesting. He's already taught us, hey, all that are in the grave, they're going to hear his voice, and then those that have done good will be resurrected unto life, and those that have done evil, resurrection of damnation. Okay, that's interesting. Now, I'd mentioned early in the sermon about the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And they were 2 different sects of the law of Moses. When they studied, they were always at odds with one another on what Scripture means and all. And even Paul, when he was recruited to be a teacher and preacher, he was of a Pharisee also. Now, Sadducees didn't even believe there was a resurrection. Today's lesson, they didn't even believe that. They didn't even believe that you'd be resurrected into anything. So what happens is they go, hey, we're going to meet up with Jesus, and we got a trick question since he believes in his resurrection. What we'll do is have a trick question for him. And so I've got here highlighted that Sadducees had a trick question. What is that trick question? A woman had seven legitimate husbands, and she died after all of them. Okay, so if you're reading in Matthew 22, you'll find out each one of these were a man of God, supposedly will be going to heaven after their death. And so they go, oh, okay, let me give you a scenario. So instead of 2, they go all the way up to 7. And they go, each one of the men died and they went on to heaven. Now the woman dies after all the other 7 died, and she died after them. All right, so here's our question for you. Therefore, in the resurrection, which you don't even believe there is a resurrection, you're a Sadducee, whose wife shall she be of the 7? For they all had her. So they all had her as a wife, and she had the 7 husbands. Supposedly all the 7 are righteous. So let's put the scenario up that they all go to heaven. Okay. Now, whose wife is she going to be in the end, since she's had 7 husbands? So anyway, I got the pretty neat trick question. Okay. So because how he's going to answer it, he'll have to pick one of the 7. So Jesus answered and said unto them, even though they have an error in their question, Jesus answered and said to them, you do err. You already have an error just in your question. Oh, because why? Because you don't know the Scriptures, not knowing the Scriptures, nor the power of God. So you're missing something there. You came up with a question about whose wife will she be in the hereafter. You don't even know the scriptures. You'd already know. You wouldn't even be asking me that question. And you're underestimating the power of God. So you do err not knowing the scripture nor the power of God, meaning you don't know the power of God also. And then let's teach. For in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven. Okay. So she was married 7 times and legitimately let's just say they were men of God and going to get saved. And now you're telling us what? There's no marriage in the hereafter. There's no given in marriage. Oh. But as the angels, well, we found out we have a whole lesson on angel. We found out they don't have a gender, that they have assignments, they're ministering spirits, they do what the Father tells them to do. And in the case where there's angels actually reporting to Jesus, so Jesus would tell them what to do, which is what the Father would tell them what to do. So that's a whole separate topic. You can see we've had several topics here inside this one topic. For in the resurrection, so you're admitting there is a resurrection. Yeah. Yeah, the resurrection. Well, they neither marry nor are given in marriage. Well, I went to a funeral and they said that now she died, she's going to be with her husband in heaven now and looking down on us. Okay, well, they probably hadn't read Matthew 22:30. It says there's no marriage in the hereafter. And in the resurrection, there's no given in marriage and neither marry. Plus, we're going to find out we have a celestial body. You're not going to be a human being. You're not going to be male or female. And you're not going to be married. You're going to be as the angels of God. And where are the angels? In heaven. So they're as the angels of God in heaven. Okay, so there I corrected your question. You were asking me about which of the 7. Well, I'm saying, hey, you got an error in your question. First of all, there is no marriage in the hereafter. And so there's no legitimate answer on the 7. What's going to happen is, and let's hope that all 8 of them are counted worthy and get into heaven. Okay, because we had up here, he's going to execute judgment because he's the Son of Man. All right, so part of your question was the 7 legitimate husbands and when she'll be married. So let's correct that to begin with. There is no marriage in heaven. Now, verse 31, but as touching the resurrection of the dead, have you not read that which was spoken unto you by God, saying, and then he's going to give us in verse 32 what he's saying. So not only does he correct you, tell you, hey, you got error in your question, which we find that all through his teachings. He corrects the question to begin with. Then he teaches you the truth, teaches you the answer. And it says, hey, haven't you read this? Read this where? Well, it's in Exodus. If you're reading the law of Moses, it's going to be in Exodus. And I have it here. There's Exodus 3:6 and a 3:16. And it says here, I am the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. Okay, well, that's interesting. So in the resurrection of the dead, you were talking about some would be resurrected. You had up here resurrection of life. Yeah, and then you had resurrection of damnation. And you didn't have anything in between that. I was just going to bring that up. Yeah, so what if I'm resurrected, but I'm not going to be in damnation or in life? Well, no such thing. It's one or the other. You'll be judged and you're going to be resurrected. Now it's a matter of where. Do you want to be resurrected into life or into damnation? So he's saying, hey, I'm the God of the living. No. So if you'd have read that and had known that, you know he's the God of the living. And of course, this is over their head. And they durst not ask him another question. If you read on here, once they say their trick question wasn't a trick at all, but it was out of ignorance. And then not only did he correct the question, he gave them the real answer afterward. That's why he's the greatest teacher that ever was or ever will be. All right, now let's look at the bottom half of our sermon here. No human being has had their final judgment. That occurs at the judgment day, which occurs at the end of the world. Well, you said a mouthful there. Yeah, you'd have to study several topics with us. But what would happen is you'll find out there's a thing called the judgment day. We've already mentioned in the previous scriptures who the judge will be. He was given authority to be the judge. All that were in the graves will be awakened and will be judged. Some are going to life, so others are going to go into damnation. So when does this occur? Well, it occurs at the judgment day. So you can study a whole topic called the judgment. Or you can study a whole nother topic just called judgment day. What happens on judgment day? Well, you might be surprised. The angels have assignments on the judgment day. So yeah, you'll find out that on the judgment day, there is no planet Earth, that all that were dead will now be awakened. They will all hear the voice of the judge, and then they're going to be judged and either be accounted worthy and go into life, or not accounted worthy and go into a thing called damnation. Now, I wanted to bring up this. It doesn't even have the word resurrection in it. But let's look at John 3:13. This seems to be a verse that my fellow man doesn't bring up. They like to tell me that their grandpa and grandma are already in heaven. And I'll see that on TV a lot. They'll go, oh, well, my uncle's smiling down at me because I did A, B, and C, and that'll make him happy looking down here. Okay, well, you must not know much scripture. Can I show you John 3:13? Because also we found out earlier in this lesson that they're in the graves and that they'll be awakened. We had that up here. All that are in the graves shall hear his voice. All right, so let's look at that. John 3:13. Now, you know, John 3:16 is one of the more common or famous, whatever, verses in the Bible. Somehow John 3:13 is skipped from people. All right, let's read that. And no man hath ascended up to heaven. Oh, but you just said that auntie and uncle were married again and in heaven looking down on us. Well, have you read John 3:13? This says no man, and this means what? Human. So no man or woman, if you want to break it down into gender. You don't have a gender in the hereafter, you have your spirit. No man hath ascended up to heaven, but he that came down from heaven. You saying there's one exception? Yeah, one that was originally from heaven. He that came down from heaven. And who is that? Son of Man. We already mentioned that in the sermon, Son of Man. Yeah, well, that's a whole nother topic. The Son of Man. And where does the Son of Man reside? In heaven, which is in heaven. That's where the Son of Man is. So here, are you saying he got judged? Yeah, came out of the grave. He was in the heart of the earth 3 days, 3 nights, his body. And then his spirit, excuse me, got judged by our Father, counted worthy. And he said, not only are you saved, you're going to sit next to me on the right hand, and I'm going to make you judgment of all, judge of all. I'm going to give you that authority. We're going to call you the Son of Man, since that's what you did. You went down and proved my plan with being the Son of Man. And you're going to be here in heaven. So it says here, no man hath ascended up to heaven. That happens after the judgment day. Okay, so when I hear you say Annie and Uncle are in heaven, I already know you don't know John 3:13. So we'll bring, especially at Cyber Church of Christ, we bring this verse up occasionally because our fellow man has this wrong. What did Jesus do when there was an error in the question? And say, first he corrected the question, then taught. So that's what we would do. If you'd say, well, aunt and uncle aren't really in heaven yet, they're awaiting judgment. Well, where'd you get that? We can show you about Judgment Day. Well, let me read John 3:13 to you, saying, no man hath ascended up to heaven. So only the Son of Man, which is in heaven. All right, so let's look at, finish today with John 11. We got some more red letter in here. John 11:24 and 25. Martha saith unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. So talking about, oh, you talking about Son of Man? Yeah, the Messiah. He came here doing the Father's will, got tortured, got what's called persecuted. So he died the worst kind of death you can die. And then since I know some scriptures, I know he'll rise again at the last day. Well, he's not going to rise again at the last day. We are. He's already been risen because why? Because he's already in heaven. We had that up here. So he's already in heaven. We're not in heaven. We're here. We're our great test, our one day on planet Earth. How are we doing? Well, everybody I talked to in the Cyber Church of Christ wants to get to heaven in the end. So they were interested in, how does that work? Do I stay with faith and knowing that I'll get judged in the end and be accounted worthy? Yeah, that's what we're after. So he says, I know he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. So she already knows that the resurrection happens at Judgment Day. And so, well, what about him? The he here is the Son of Man. And then Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection. Well, how are you going to be the resurrection? Because the Father gave me authority to be the judge at the end. And since I'm judging you at the end, you're going to be resurrected into what? Damnation or into life. So I am the resurrection. Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. Oh, okay. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. So we know, hey, that tells me a lot there. So even after my life is over as a human being on planet Earth, I'm actually going to still live. He said, that's right. You're going to be resurrected. So are you going to be accounted worthy? Yeah, that's my goal. All right. Be accounted worthy. The judge would then judge you. And the judge would say, okay, you're going to be resurrected into a thing called life. And I go, oh, so resurrected mean I was dead and now I'm alive? Well, you were dead as a human being. Your spirit never dies. So you can find that out. And then, did you believe in me? Yes, he that believeth does my commandments. He believeth in me, though he were dead. See, he was dead here. That was bad. Yet shall he live. Hey, you went from a past tense, we're dead, to shall live. That's right. So that's what we're going to find out. So be the children of the resurrection is what? Well, that means I'm going to be accounted worthy. How am I going to be accounted worthy? I'm going to live by faith, do his commandments while I'm here on planet Earth. One of the main things I do here on planet Earth is get forgiveness of sin. So that forgiveness of sin, I don't want any sin to be there when I get judged in the end. All right, so I know I'll be awakened from the grave. Why? Because it said all shall be awakened from the grave to hear his voice. So I'll be awakened, I'll hear his voice, and then I want him to say, hey, brother, you are going to be resurrected into life. And then I'll find out what we have no gender. We'll be as the angels and we'll be in heaven. So anyway, I hope you learned. There's a whole lot in this sermon that I didn't get to because of length. But you can see there's topics inside topics inside topics. So just to know what resurrection is, I got to find out about the Judgment Day, who is the Son of Man, what do you mean accounted worthy? resurrected into life, resurrected into damnation. Whole lot in here, and I've just touched the surface. I had a whole lot of scriptures talking about the resurrection that we wouldn't even get to. Besides the time constraint, I wanted to give you a 30,000-foot view that, hey, we're all going to be judged in the end. And you did see this John 13, didn't you? Nobody's in heaven yet. So take that with you for sure today, and know to look that up to show anyone when they say, hey, so-and-so's in heaven. You go, well, look at John 3:13. They're actually in the grave awaiting judgment. So there you go. What happens after judgment? What happens after judgment is resurrection. So what was our original definition of resurrection? Well, it says here, rising to life again, returning to life after death. Huh. Okay, so even though after you died on planet Earth, you will have the resurrection. And who do you want to be? I want to be the children of the resurrection, and I want to be accounted worthy to obtain that world and do what? I want to be a resurrection of the just. So I'm either going to be what? I'm in the resurrection of life. This is what I want. And what I don't want is to be resurrected into damnation. Anyway, take these few thoughts with you today. And thanks for watching. If you're watching, we encourage you to watch more videos and to contact us. We'd love to have you. We worship in them. We have a Bible study in the midweek, which anybody can have any question about anything, anytime. And then we'll also provide one-on-one teaching. If you want to ask one of us, say, hey, I don't want to be in a group, but I got a couple of Bible questions, we encourage that. There's nothing that says you can't study Bible with a group, that you can study with your teacher. That's the beauty of the scriptures. Okay, anyway, I hope you had a great day, and that you'll watch more of our videos. Thank you for watching. We're the Cyber Church of Christ.